Thank you to our sponsors for today's video, Eaton, Ionna, and InfyPower. Eaton is a one-stop shop for implementing reliable and innovative EV charging infrastructure at your site. Across all applications, Eaton's EV charging infrastructure, hardware and software, gives you the scalability, flexibility, and intelligence you need to charge today and scale up tomorrow. Learn more at eaton.com/EVCI. Also, Ionna, North America's premier charging network. With unmatched commitment to elevating the customer experience, Ionna is opening America's roads to all EVs, giving drivers the coverage they need, the reliability they deserve, and the amenities they crave. And InfyPower, the largest EV charger module provider with over 3 million power modules running reliably worldwide. Their latest G2 collection features ultra-high power density and efficiency for EV charging and energy storage integration. InfyPower, innovation for your power. Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. The last time you saw this thing on our channel, we were at the factory in Normal, Illinois, taking delivery of our brand new Rivian R1S. And, well, about 1,000 miles later, actually about 1,200 miles later, I've brought it back here to the hub, and I have a list of things that I love and hate about our new Rivian R1S. We really got to know it over the last few days and a long road trip, and there's so many cool things that I found out just by going on a road trip that I'm absolutely thrilled with on this vehicle. And then there's so many other things that I just cannot believe have made their way into an over $100,000 vehicle that just shouldn't be acceptable whatsoever. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through all the pros and all the cons of our new Rivian R1S. Well, this is our new Rivian R1S. It's actually Scot's new Rivian R1S from our team, and I want to say a huge thank you to all the viewers who were super nice to her in the comment section of that video. I think you may have encouraged her to want to make more videos about her Rivian, so maybe we'll see her in front of the camera from time to time talking about this vehicle and maybe even others if you guys ask her nicely. I've been driving this the last couple days. I'm actually about to go bring it up over to Scot's place so she can drive it for the next, couple years basically, and we'll have it on hand for stuff. And there's so many good and so many bad things with it. So first, let me start by, if you haven't watched our delivery video, yes, we got a new Rivian R1S. I always like to have sort of the benchmark vehicles in each category in our sort of long-term fleet. And you guys have been so cool. Those of you who bought Rivians, you've used our referral code, and it basically made it where we couldn't say no to getting a brand new Rivian. So I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who used our Rivian referral code. If you're going to buy a Rivian, still keep using it. It's down in the comment section below. This is certainly not going to be the last Rivian that we buy or lease. And we really got this thing for an incredible deal. It's just a few $100s a month on a lease for an over $100,000 sticker R1S dual motor max pack with the performance upgrade. And I went through the specific deal and numbers in that particular video when we took delivery. But now 1,000 miles later, I've learned quite a few things. So I'm just gonna quickly walk you around the car and point at things that I like and don't like and that I've been surprised to learn, and also some really nice improvements to the Gen 2. So I think let's start up front and let's talk about the things that have been really nice about our new Rivian R1S. A lot of you guys may know that that is my pretty much daily driver right there, the Rivian R1T. That's one of the first launch edition trucks that they built, and I picked it up about 3 years ago. So I've also driven plenty of Rivians on test and friends' vehicles as well. I probably have over 100,000 miles logged in Rivians just myself. And so I thought I knew what I was getting into when we got this Rivian R1S, but there's been some surprising changes and surprising updates, both good and bad. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to get a Generation 2 truck. Rivian is one of the few companies that consistently updates their vehicle through over-the-air software updates and hardware changes that are rolling through the production line to really make them better, and in some cases worse, but mostly better. I want to start first with the headlight performance. The low beam output of it isn't great. And I kind of miss that the Gen 2 doesn't have the legit fog lights. Like down here in my Gen 1 truck, I have actual fog lights. This is now the turn signal for the Gen 2. It means that I don't get a sort of low, widespread light that I love so much about driving my Gen 1. However, it does have some really cool high beam tech. Rivian was the first vehicle to launch in America with adaptive driving beam or matrix lights. Europeans are laughing in 2012 at us right now because they've had this functionality for a long time. But our lighting laws are ancient in the US, and it just recently became legal to support ADB, and the matrix function on this Rivian is honestly amazing. I drove an early version of these headlights where they were kind of getting busy and kind of blinding people from time to time, and there's definitely been some updates where I was able to drive through 2 night stretches on our road trip back through Normal, leaving auto headlights, auto high beams on, and it would keep oncoming traffic sort of in a dark window, and then everything else was bright. And I was so impressed with the implementation of the new Gen 2 headlights. I've also grown to really like the new light bar. Visually, I think the Gen 1 trucks have a little bit nicer light bar to them. I don't like all this extra stuff. It was really nice just walking by this thing as it was plugged into a high power charger or even a level 2, and having the individual progress bars tell me roughly what state of charge I was at in 10% increments. It's a great way just to glance over and know, okay, I just hit 50% state of charge, I just hit 60, whatever it might be. So that's been a really nice thing that I absolutely love about the Gen 2. I also love, and we haven't needed to use it and hopefully never will, but you know, I'm sure there will be cases where there's sort of an emergency function built into this light bar where I can have yellow lights sort of guide traffic around the vehicle. It would be incredibly useful for our range testing when we run cars out of charge and need to use, you know, a high voltage, or I should say high power from one vehicle to dispense into another one. But surprisingly, Rivian does not support any high power output at the moment. They don't support vehicle to home or vehicle to load or vehicle to grid yet. And there's no 240 volt outlet in this vehicle, which to me is a huge surprise. And so I actually can't use this for range testing. That's a real miss that I was hoping Rivian would add. But you know, on the positives, headlights, awesome. Really, really liking it. Also, I have to say, the wheels are nice looking as well. When I first saw the Aero wheels, I was kind of like, man, those are not it, but they have grown on me. And this particular spec of having the dark out pack, which got these dark badges along with those wheels and the blacked out paint, to me looks really cool. Now, Scot, of course, spec'd the color being black. She really wanted a blacked out Rivian. Personally, I would have gone for a different color. I also think there's other colors that pop more in YouTube thumbnails, but since this is mostly her car, she got to select the configuration, and the black exterior is just, you know, I think works well in this combination here. I also have to say I love the interior. The Ocean Coast spec that we went with here is definitely one of my favorite interiors that Rivian offers, probably the favorite. And I like that it's the base level interior. We've shot already a full build quality analysis of this vehicle, going through all of the individual problems and squeaks and rattles on Colton's channel, Out of Spec Detailing. And so we talk more about the interior in that particular one, but you guys can see it's just gorgeous in here. I think no one does interiors better than Rivian, and I'm really thrilled with it. Another surprising positive about the interior is the sound system. A lot of you guys know, and even in our delivery video, we were complaining about the Generation 2 Rivian sound systems. We actually have a whole video talking about how crappy the sound systems are in this thing on our Out of Spec Bits channel that TJ shot. I'm not sure if there's something unique about this R1S, or there was a software update that came out, or what happened, but the audio system, we spec'd $2,500. Now, again, it was amortized into the lease, so it didn't cost us really all that much, but we spec'd the sound package, which also comes with the electrochromatic roof, which does actually block a lot of heat. And I really love that roof that you can change, you know, the transparency levels with the touch of a button on the dash through an electrical signal. That's cool. Sound systems, I'm not going to say it's great. I'm not even going to say it's good, but I'm going to say it's way better than it's been. It's totally livable at the moment. just recently, I was in Austin, Texas. I had a tri-motor, brand new Rivian R1T on test with the upgraded sound system, and it was unlistenable. I mean, you could not sit in there and enjoy any music past half volume. When you'd go past 15 out of 30, the subwoofer would get blown out, and I was like, oh no, Rivian, how could it have gone so wrong from an auditory perspective when the Meridian sound system that's in my early truck is just awesome. It's really great. And so we spec'd the big sound system, hoping that Rivian would update it over time and improve it. And man, we actually did enjoy listening to music in this on the way back. The subwoofer was more powerful than certainly more powerful than the R1T we had, but certainly more powerful than I remember. The overall soundscape and where the voices were and the placement of all the sounds was way more natural sounding than in the past. And so my impression at the moment is this top level system that's in here, this really should be the base audio. And I think it would be totally acceptable as a base audio system. It gets loud enough. You can tell when you listen at loud volumes that the sub's really working. And if you go all the way up, all the speakers get blown out, which is unacceptable for a premium audio system. But at least it's listenable and maybe, dare I say, enjoyable. And we'll see how it sounds over time as it gets broken in. But the sound system is no longer a reason not to buy the R1S, which it kind of was getting to that point for me. I was like, what are they doing? So again, big pro on the sound system being at least functional. I still think Rivian needs to go to Bowers & Wilkins or Bang & Olufsen or Meridian again and just have someone who knows how to do audio, because this is, again, it's acceptable for a base system, but not for a high-end system. Other pros, what else do I love about this thing? Well, I have to say, just commending Rivian, there's a lot of noise online and even coming from our side that the Generation 2 trucks have been less stable from a software perspective. Screens crashing, random glitches here or there. And if you take a look in here, it looks, the same as every other Rivian, but the electrical architecture for the new truck has changed. And we experienced almost none of that on our way home. The route planner was a little bit off and typically pessimistic, saying we'd get to a station when we'd leave at 10 miles of range and then we'd show up at 30 or 40 miles of range. I still can't understand why the route planner doesn't show you your arrival in terms of percentage and not miles, but and I can go through a whole list of improvements we want to see, but I have to say the stability of the system worked really well. I think the only glitch in the 1,200 miles I've driven this thing so far that I've experienced is for some reason, Spotify stopped loading for about 10 minutes. And it had connectivity and I could do other things with connectivity. And then I was going to pull over and do a reset on the system and it came back and it's been fine ever since. So that's really it. And that's really minor. And it could be something on Spotify's end. So I think the stability of the Gen 2 software has gotten way better. And then there's some things that I don't like. And I'm sure I'll mix in as I think about things as we go. But we got to talk about the real problem here. So we spec'd the R1S in the max battery pack, which is a Samsung 53G cell. It's 145-ish kilowatt hours usable. Pretty juicy battery pack. The problem is the efficiency. This vehicle's rated at 410 miles of range. Now, I don't know exactly at what miles per kilowatt hour you'd have to do to get there. I mean, we can do the math really quick. Let's just do that here. We'll do 410 miles of range divided by 145 first. So 145,000 watt hours divided by 410 miles would be 353 watt hour per mile, which in miles per kilowatt hour, which is what Rivian says. So I can do 1,000 divided by 353, it'd be 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour. So this vehicle, we would need to hit roughly 2.8, 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour in order to reach the 410 miles of range on the highway. Well, we live in America. We've got big distances to cover and we've got relatively high speed limits, especially compared with Europe and other places, excluding Germany, of course. And so we're cruising 85 miles an hour in this thing. The whole way back from normal, I've got this thing pegged on driver assistance, which I definitely want to talk about, at 85 miles an hour. And, I was thinking we're going to get some good efficiency because we've got the aero wheels and, it auto disconnects the rear motor and we're running front wheel drive and I lowered the suspension down into low. I could not get this thing over 2 miles per kilowatt hour on the highway. We were really in between 1.8 to 2 miles per kilowatt hour the entire way back. And I can show you our trip stats because they're still saved in here. Around the city, it's certainly more efficient than my Gen 1 R1T quad motor, but my quad motor R1T on the truck, even on all-terrains, is getting 1.6, 1.7, and here we're getting 1.8, 1.9 miles per kilowatt hour. So I just feel like while in the EPA cycle, this truck performs pretty well, this SUV, in the real world, we just were not getting the range as promised. And I think that's going to show up in our testing. Granted, the vehicle was new. It's out of alignment from the factory. We talk about that in our build quality analysis. And so, you know, it could be a little bit of tire scrub as well. I just think it's so funny. They delivered a vehicle that's not aligned to us. And that's all in Colton's build quality video. So you take a realistically 300 miles of usable range, which is still plenty on the highway. I think that's great, and I'm glad it's got 145 kilowatt hours to compensate for the, I would say, poor highway efficiency. I mean, we just come to, you know, the amount of frontal area that you have here is absolutely massive. So you burn through that 300 miles on the initial leg, and you go to charge it. And this is where it all goes downhill. And this is not news. We knew this going into the purchasing experience, but the Rivian, especially the Max Pack, charges like ass, technical term. And it's really rough. We were doing like 40, 45-minute charging stops to get up to 70-ish%. What's funny is this thing doesn't even do 500 amps. It does like 492 amps. My Gen 1 large pack, which is a previous generation cell, it's the Samsung 50G cell, that'll sit at 500 amps. I'll hit 217 kilowatts on that truck almost every single time. Here, we have the same form factor of the battery pack, a higher energy density cell, a less power dense cell, so it actually charges worse than my Gen 1 truck. I see about 210, 211 kilowatt peak. Actually, the first thing we did when we got Rhonda, that's the name of this one, is we hooked it up to rivianroamer.com, and it logs all the data. So it's seen, and the truck's communicated, a maximum of 210.5 kilowatts. Okay, that's fine. We know that Rivian sticking with a low voltage charging architecture or battery architecture really was going to limit it in terms of charging performance. I think it's funny how this won't pull 500 amps, but my early truck will. This is like close, but it just doesn't get up there. It's a little bit odd. And there's really not much they can do to improve the charging performance because this cell is just less of a power cell and more of an energy dense cell. But that really translated to kind of an annoying road trip. The first stop that we did, okay, we were out, we were gonna get dinner, and that took up some time and it was really no issue. And then the second stop that we did, we're like, well, we already ate. Now we just gotta sit here and stand around and wait for this damn thing to charge. I think certainly we focus on DC charging a lot more than other outlets and a lot more than most people, you know, even would need to. And for the you know, one-stop road trip, this is totally fine. But if you're going to take your Rivian on an adventure, which I would argue it's built for, the stop after stop after stop, this 210 kilowatt peak on this sucks, and the curve is even worse. At 50% state of charge, we're down to under or right around 150 kilowatts on a giant battery pack doing basically 1C charging at 50%, totally unacceptable, absolutely insane. And so I just, you know, we complain about it, we talk about it all the time. We say Rivian went backwards with the Max Pack, and personally, I would choose to get the large pack that's in my truck over this any day of the week, but they don't make that Samsung 50G cell pack anymore. I just think it's a real problem. So we'll see how that holds up. We'll see how Scot likes it or dislikes it. She honestly had less of an issue than I did with it, and I think most people also would have less of an issue than I did with it, but I just want to see Rivian compete here in the charging categories, so I won't harp on it too much. We've already done many videos talking about the charging performance, and again, we went into this vehicle knowing it's going to suck on a road trip. It was just doing 1,000 miles with that charging really did suck, and I would say that's kind of the limit. Anything more than 1,000 miles, man, it can go downhill really quick. What else is bad? Oh, I've got some issues with the way this drives. Now, I've driven plenty of R1Ss, mostly R1Ts, but I've driven plenty of R1Ss. We've done road trips with them, race to Vegas, everything. And I've never driven one that drives this bad. And I'm not 100% sure if it's because the alignment is off, but this vehicle, I've got two issues with the way it drives. Aside from the drivetrain, I'm just talking chassis and cruising. My Rivian R1T will get on the highway, I can sit at 85 miles an hour, and it's just locked in. And I feel like I'm just sitting in a couch, and it's comfy, and I'm floating, and it's great, and it tracks straight, and it's wonderful. This feels the opposite. This is nervous on the highway, and it certainly feels like it picks up more wind than the trucks because you've got all this extra area for the wind to push you around, so you just feel a lot of sway as you're going down the road. And granted, we do drive it most of the time in standard suspension height and not in low, but the performance is the same low and standard. And you're sitting on the highway and you're just doing this going down, and it's like, whoa, we're just swaying everywhere. Then if you break away from driver assistance, Scot had a lot of issues with this in our road trip where, you know, she was getting used to having lane centering. She's not driven a lot of vehicles with lane centering, and we'd come up next to a truck on the Rivian hands-free system, and, you know, it wouldn't scooch over for the truck. So she's like, man, I really feel like we're close to that truck. And she'd put in a steering input, and we'd, you know, try to move us to the left. And with her steering input, she'd break off the lane centering system, and it was almost like we were just fishtailing. It was pretty aggressive amounts of slop and sway. Colton drove it too, and he was like, dude, there's something wrong here. This doesn't feel right. It almost feels like the rear subframe is not connected to the rest of the chassis. Like there's so much deflection and bushing and just like complete oddness going on there. And you just feel the thing getting nervous whenever you go down the highway. Any steering input, you're just like, whoa. What's going on here? It's very unusual, and I'm certainly going to bring it to Rivian and have it checked out. I'm also going to drive another new R1S on the same roads back to back to double check if it's just an issue with this car. Could be the tires, could be a few other things, not sure, but it just feels very odd. The next issue is, we've talked about it in the past, this one wasn't new, R1S just never drives as good as R1T. And you really feel it when you hit bumps, especially in low suspension. But you know, this thing is just, the body heave motions are massive. And they did a huge revalving and a big change for Gen 2 R1S. It still just doesn't drive right. It almost feels to me that Rivian engineered all the suspension, all the chassis calibration on R1T, which is like a 12 or 14 inch longer wheelbase. It's completely settled down, one of the best driving electric cars on the market. And then they didn't really change much when they went to R1S. They recognized that. They changed a lot of it for the Gen 2, and I still feel like both primary and secondary ride are not tuned well enough. And that's a little bit concerning to me because they have some of the most adjustable suspension systems on their vehicles. But we had Andreas came on our road trip too, so both Andreas, me, and Scot in the back, we were all feeling a little bit car sick, not only from, again, that nervousness and it just not wanting to track straight on the highway, but also all the body heave motions we were going through and the porpoising we were experiencing. I was like, oh my God, this is just not a suspension fitting of a premium SUV. Let's see how things go. We're going to wait for software updates. This has the newest update that claimed to soften the suspension on it. They've been adjusting their chassis tuning over the air for a long time, but I was actually, these are just experiences, especially that nervousness I've never experienced from another R1S. And again, Colton took it out too. He drove it. I'm like, dude, you've driven a bunch of Rivians and R1Ss specifically. Can you tell me, like, am I crazy? And he's like, dude, this does not feel right on the highway. I'm like, I know, there's something off here for sure. I also have to say, the brake pedal in this feels like there's no fluid in there, or there's air in there and it's like been boiled. You hit the brake pedal and it goes right to the firewall. The brakes function perfectly fine. It's got a ton of stopping power for the first or second stop, and then they get hot. But yeah, there's just something odd going on with the brake pedal. Also, I'm going to have them sort out for us. Should I talk about driver assistance for a second? Why don't you pop on over here? And yeah, just come on over this side. I want to show everyone the stock on the right side is different in the Gen 2. We've shown this in other videos where you pull back to enable driver assistance by pulling this way rather than pushing down like in the early trucks. It's still a little bit annoying because it relies on pre-mapped highways in order to function. It seems to work in way more places than even my Gen 1 truck. I've been complaining a lot that here in Colorado, Super Cruise as well as the Rivian systems and Lucid, they don't operate on a lot of the roads around here because there's been a ton of construction in the Colorado highway interstate system. And this one, while it still will kick on and off and it's a little bit annoying in our particular area, actually does operate in places that even my Gen 1 truck won't. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed overall with the Gen 2 ADAS. It's a completely different system than the Gen 1 trucks. It has enhanced highway assist, which is not just capacitive touch wheel, sort of hands-on lane centering. It will tell you in certain areas when you're not around a lot of interchanges and other stuff, there's a couple criteria, but it's most highways. It'll say, take your hands off the wheel. It does eye tracking from the rearview mirror, and you can just sit there like this and it's blasting down the highway. Like 80% of the time, it's wonderful. Really a wonderful lane centering system. You hit the turn signal, it does an automatic lane change. I would actually turn down the aggressiveness of the automatic lane change. It puts in a big steering input to make a lane change. And again, you couple that big steering input paired with the nervousness I explained, the whole thing feels like if you're on a loose surface, the back end's just gonna come around on you. And it really freaked Scott out a couple times, especially when we drove it in rain and did some automatic lane changes. She was like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, something's off here. But the system itself did a great job of getting us here. We used it almost exclusively the whole highway drive. And that last 20% I mentioned where it wasn't great, I think it got into like a weird oscillation along with the car's nervousness that we were kind of ping-ponging going down the highway. So we're sitting on the system and it's just left, right on the wheel, and the whole thing's got some body motions going on, and we were like about to puke. And I couldn't figure out why it would do that sometimes, and other times it would track great on the system. But occasionally something would upset it and it would just get into this oscillation of steering input, and it was a little bit odd. So I still think that needs to be sorted. That also could be paired with the alignment being off or whatever's going on with the nervousness of our R1S. So to sort of summarize the likings and dislikings after our trip, some of the Gen 2 updates are absolutely wonderful in terms of the headlight output and software and driver assistance, and even features such as heated third row was really nice because we did sit back there for a second and that worked out pretty well. And then other things have not gone so well. The door handles, which weren't squeaky when we took delivery. By the time we got to Omaha, all 4 door handles started squeaking and making noise, and they just do that on Gen 2s. It just doesn't feel as premium as the Gen 1 early trucks did. It just feels a little bit more hollow. We already have rattles in here in 3 separate places, one in the driver's door, one from the vanity mirror here, and then actually there's 2 more on the passenger side. So we have 4 separate places of rattles on a brand new $105,000 vehicle. To me, just seems like they really need to go in and dial up the quality. The sound system was improved, but it's still not fitting of a vehicle that's supposed to be a luxury class electric SUV. You get into EQS SUV, BMW iX, Audi e-tron, all in this category, all with amazing sound systems, and this is just nowhere near that level, but at least it's serviceable, it's listenable, and it's way better than it was even just the last time I tried it a few weeks ago. The efficiency was surprisingly bad considering we got the maximum efficiency spec, but again, the car might still need to be run in and dialed in, and we're certainly going to be playing around with that a little bit more. So I think everything here was as expected for me. We've already done plenty of reviews of the Generation 2 Rivian R1S and R1T. I can't wait to see what Scott thinks about driving this over the next few weeks. And I would say she's thrilled with it, and overall I'm pretty thrilled with it as well. I know I listed off quite a few things that need improvements and that I'm not thrilled with, but man, it's a cool vehicle. It's got the looks, it's got the capability from an off-road perspective. They're really fun to drive hard as well, no question. This is, I did a whole performance driving review of these out in the a VDA somewhere out in California, and that's a video that's already live on this channel. And like the spider web of capability of Rivian R1 is amazing. It can climb a mountain, rip down a back road, and sit on the highway and cruise and do it all pretty well. Certainly some tuning and adjustments needed over time. So that's really what we love and hate about the Rivian R1S 1,000 miles in. Took delivery about 4 days ago. It's been great, and it's about to go to Scot. You'll see a bunch of videos hopefully coming with her. And thank you guys so much for using our Rivian Refferal Code. It's in the description below. Thank you so much for watching this Out of Spec Reviews video. We'll have plenty of bits episodes and other things coming on this, and we're gonna run it through the whole testing regime. But the weather, as you can tell, is getting windy. A storm is coming in. That's not gonna be for a few days or even a few weeks. We have to wait for good weather. So thanks for watching. See you in another one again soon. Bye-bye.